I'm sitting in my apartment in Denver right now, looking out at the Rocky Mountains covered in snow. 3 years ago, I never imagined my life would be this peaceful. There was a woman who once told me I was too clingy just because I asked where she was at 3 in the morning. That night changed everything. She screamed those words at me like I was the villain, but I was just a man who loved her. Let me tell you what happened. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever been called too much for simply caring about someone, hit that like button right now. And if you want to hear how this story ends, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you will not see this ending coming. It all started 4 years ago in a coffee shop in Columbus, Ohio. I was 24 years old when I first saw Megan. I had just landed my first real job as a software engineer at a small startup in Columbus. The pay was decent, the work was challenging, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was building something. That Saturday morning I decided to work from a little coffee shop about 2 blocks from my office. The place had exposed brick walls, mismatched wooden chairs, and the kind of atmosphere that made you want to stay for hours. I was deep into my code when I heard a gasp followed by the sound of liquid hitting wood. I looked up just in time to see a wave of iced coffee spreading across my table, heading straight for my laptop. I grabbed it just in time, holding it up like it was a newborn baby I had just saved from danger. When I looked up, I saw her. She had her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She apologized over and over again, offering to buy me a new coffee to pay for any damage, to do whatever it took to make things right. I told her it was fine, that no harm was done. She insisted on buying me a replacement drink, and somehow that turned into us sitting together for the next 3 hours talking about everything and nothing. Her name was Megan. She was 22, worked in marketing for an advertising agency downtown, and had the kind of laugh that made everyone around her smile. She told me she loved hiking, that she had a goal to visit every state park in Ohio, and that she believed the best conversations happened over coffee. I remember thinking that this was it. This was the moment people talk about when they say they just knew. We exchanged numbers that day, and by the following weekend we were on our first official date. I took her to Hocking Hills State Park, about an hour south of Columbus. We hiked the trails, took pictures by the waterfalls, and talked until the sun started to set. She held my hand on the way back to the car, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. The months that followed were everything I had ever wanted. Megan would cook dinner for me every Sunday evening. Nothing fancy, just pasta or chicken, but it was the effort that mattered. She would leave little notes in my jacket pockets, things like "thinking of you" or "you make me happy." I kept every single one of them in a box in my closet. I started imagining our future together. A house with a backyard, maybe a dog, kids someday. I thought I had found my person. After a year of dating, Megan brought up the idea of moving in together. She said it made sense financially, and more importantly, she wanted to wake up next to me every day. I did not need convincing. I found us a 2-bedroom apartment in German Village, one of the nicest neighborhoods in Columbus. I spent weeks picking out furniture, making sure everything was perfect for when she arrived. The day she moved in with her 2 suitcases and that big smile on her face, I thought my life was complete. The first 3 months of living together were like an extended honeymoon. We had breakfast together every morning before work. Friday nights were dedicated to movie marathons on the couch. We talked about getting engaged, about what kind of wedding we would want, about where we would go for our honeymoon. I even started looking at rings, browsing jewelry websites late at night when she was asleep. But somewhere around the 4th month, things started to shift. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining it. The first thing I noticed was her phone. Megan used to leave it lying around anywhere, screen up, completely unbothered. But suddenly, she started keeping it face down. When I walked into a room, she would flip it over or slide it under a pillow. One evening, I asked to borrow her phone to look something up because mine was charging in the other room. She hesitated for just a second before handing it to me, but that second felt like an hour. When I tried to open it, the password had changed. She had never changed her password before. When I mentioned it, she rolled her eyes and said she just needed some privacy. She asked if that was a crime. I dropped it, telling myself I was being paranoid. Then came the late nights. Megan had always been home by 6 or 7 in the evening, but now she was coming home at 9, sometimes 10. She said she had client meetings, that work was getting busier, that her boss was putting more pressure on her. When I asked about the clients or what projects she was working on, she would wave her hand and say it was just work stuff that I would not understand. I wanted to believe her. So I did. The little things disappeared next. No more notes in my pockets, no more Sunday dinners. I would cook something and wait for her only to have her text me at 8, saying she had already eaten with coworkers. The apartment that had felt so warm and full of love started to feel hollow. I asked her if everything was okay between us, if I had done something wrong. She told me I was overthinking, that I needed to relax, that couples go through phases like this. I tried to be understanding. I tried to give her space. But one night, about 2 months before everything fell apart, I saw something that I could not unsee. Megan was in the shower and her phone lit up on the nightstand. I was not trying to snoop. I was just lying in bed and the screen was facing me. The notification showed a text from someone named Marcus. There was a heart emoji next to his name. I could not read the message, just the preview, but those few words and that little red heart burned themselves into my brain. When she came out of the shower, I asked her who Marcus was. Her face changed instantly. It went from relaxed to defensive in less than a second. She accused me of going through her phone. I told her I had not touched it, that the notification just popped up. She called me paranoid. She said I was being toxic. She told me that Marcus was just a colleague and that I needed to stop acting like a jealous teenager. I apologized, even though I had done nothing wrong. I apologized because I loved her and I did not want to fight. But that night, lying next to her in the dark, I could not shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The pattern continued over the next 2 months. Megan would come home late, sometimes smelling like alcohol, sometimes smelling like cigarette smoke, even though she didn't smoke. Every time I asked where she had been, she had an excuse ready. Gym ran late, happy hour with the girls, her car broke down and she had to wait for a ride. The excuses were always plausible enough that I could not argue, but they never quite added up either. I started changing my own behavior, trying to be the partner she apparently needed. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped calling when she was out late. I gave her all the space in the world, hoping that if I just backed off enough, the old Megan would come back. But the more space I gave, the further she drifted. The gaslighting was the worst part. When I expressed concern, she told me I was imagining things. When I said I felt disconnected from her, she said maybe I needed therapy. When I tried to have a serious conversation about our relationship, she accused me of being suffocating. Every conversation ended with me apologizing for having feelings. I started to question my own sanity. Was I really that clingy? Was I really that needy? Was I the problem? My body started showing the signs before my mind fully accepted what was happening. I could not sleep. I would lie awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, listening for the sound of her key in the door. I lost almost 5 pounds in a month because my appetite had vanished. At work, I could not concentrate. I made mistakes I never would have made before. My manager pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. I lied and said everything was fine. Then came the night that changed everything. It was June, a Saturday. I had been away on a work trip for 2 days, some conference in Chicago that I had not wanted to attend but could not get out of. The whole time I was gone, I barely heard from Megan. A few short texts here and there, but nothing substantial. I told myself she was just busy. I got home around 11 that night, earlier than expected because I'd caught an earlier flight. I was excited to see her, to hold her, to feel like things were normal again, even if just for a moment. But when I walked into our apartment, it was dark and empty. Her shoes were gone. Her purse was gone. She was gone. I called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. I sent a text asking where she was. No response. I sat down on the couch and waited. Midnight came and went, then 1 in the morning, then 2. I tried calling again over and over, but every call went unanswered. By 3 in the morning, I was sitting in the dark living room, staring at the front door, my mind racing through every terrible possibility. Car accident, emergency, something at work, anything that would explain why my girlfriend was not home and was not answering her phone. That is when I heard a car pull up outside. I went to the window and looked down at the parking lot. A black BMW I did not recognize was idling near our building. The passenger door opened and Megan stepped out. She was laughing, leaning back into the car to say something to whoever was driving. Then she blew a kiss toward the driver before shutting the door and walking toward our building. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I sat back down in the dark and waited. When she opened the door and flipped on the light, she jumped about a foot in the air. Her hand flew to her chest as she saw me sitting there on the couch. "What are you doing sitting in the dark like that?" she demanded. "You scared me half to death." I kept my voice calm even though everything inside me was screaming. "Where were you?" I asked. "Out," she said, already moving toward the bedroom. "Why are you interrogating me the second I walked through the door?" I stood up and followed her. "It is 3 a.m, Megan. I've been calling you for hours. I just got back from my trip and you were not here. Who dropped you off?" She spun around to face me. "A coworker," she snapped. "Her car broke down earlier and I gave her a ride. Then she gave me a ride home." "Is that okay with you, detective?" "That does not make sense," I said. "If you gave her a ride because her car broke down, why did she drop you off? Where is your car?" For a moment, something flickered across her face. It might have been panic, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by rage. "Oh my God, here we go again," she shouted. "Every single time I go anywhere, you have to know every detail. Who I was with, where I was, what time, why." She threw her purse on the bed. "You are so clingy, Jerome. I cannot breathe around you. I feel like I'm suffocating." "I just asked a simple question," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But she was not listening. She was pacing now, her voice getting louder with every word. "You are too clingy," she screamed. "Do you understand that? You are too much. Maybe if you were not so needy, I would not have to escape from you every chance I get." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood there looking at this woman I had loved for 3 years, and I did not recognize her. The Megan I met in that coffee shop, the one who left notes in my pockets and cooked me dinner on Sundays, she was gone. Maybe she had never really existed at all. I did not yell back. I did not argue. I just looked at her and said, "Okay, Megan. You are right. I am sorry." Then I walked into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I sat on the cold tile floor for what must have been 2 hours. I could hear her moving around in the bedroom for a while, muttering to herself. Then the apartment went quiet. She had gone to bed without checking on me, without apologizing, without caring at all. Sitting on that floor, something inside me finally broke. But it was not the kind of breaking that destroys you. It was the kind that sets you free. I thought about the past year, all the signs I had ignored, all the times I had blamed myself for her behavior. I thought about my brother Derek and something he had told me months ago when I had called him, worried about my relationship. He had said, "If someone makes you feel crazy for caring, they are the problem, not you." He was right. I was not clingy. I was not needy. I was a man who loved a woman who did not deserve that love, and I was done. I made my decision right there on that bathroom floor. I was not going to confront her. I was not going to beg for an explanation. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of another argument that would somehow end with me apologizing. I was simply going to disappear. At 5 a.m, I quietly opened the bathroom door. Megan was asleep in our bed, sprawled out like she did not have a care in the world. I stood in the doorway for a moment looking at her. 3 years of my life. 3 years of love and hope and dreams about our future. And it had all been a lie. I called my brother Derek from the living room, keeping my voice low. He lived in Denver, Colorado, about 1,500 miles away. When he answered, groggy with sleep, I told him I needed to come stay with him. He did not ask questions. He just said, "Get on the next flight. I will be at the airport." I pulled 2 suitcases from the closet and packed only what was mine. Clothes, my laptop, a few personal items. I did not take any of the furniture I had bought. I did not take any of the photos of us that hung on the walls. I did not take anything that reminded me of her. When I was done, I stood in the middle of our living room one last time. I took my apartment key off my keychain and placed it in the center of the kitchen table. I thought about leaving a note, some kind of explanation. But then I realized she did not deserve one. If she wanted closure, she could find it the same way I had to find out the truth about her, on her own. I walked to the bedroom door and looked at her one more time. She was still sleeping, her breathing slow and even. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even relief, just emptiness. I turned around and walked out the door. The Uber to the airport arrived at 6:15. By 8, I was on a flight to Denver. By 11 that morning Mountain Time, I was standing in the arrivals terminal hugging my brother. He took one look at my face and knew not to push for details right away. We drove to his place in silence, the Rocky Mountains growing larger on the horizon. When we finally sat down in his living room, I told him everything. The late nights, the gaslighting, the accusations of being clingy the night before. He listened without interrupting, and when I was done, he just nodded and said, "You did the right thing. You are going to be okay." The first 6 months in Denver were about survival. I stayed with Derek while I got back on my feet. I found a new job at a tech company downtown, a fresh start in every sense of the word. I changed my phone number. I deleted all my social media accounts except LinkedIn, which I forgot about entirely. I asked my mom and the rest of my family not to tell Megan where I was. They agreed without hesitation. Back in Ohio, Megan apparently did not take my disappearance well. My mom told me that she showed up at their house a few days after I left, demanding to know where I was. She was angry at first, accusing me of stealing things that I had actually paid for, threatening to call the police. When that did not work, she changed tactics. She cried, she apologized, she begged my mother to tell her where I had gone. But my mom kept her promise. In Denver, I started to rebuild. I rented a small apartment near downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and my thoughts. I started hiking on the weekends, exploring the trails around the Rocky Mountains that I had only ever seen in pictures. The physical exhaustion helped quiet my mind. The beauty of the mountains reminded me that there was a world outside of the pain I'd been living in. About a year after I arrived, I met Sophie at work. She was a graphic designer a few years older than me, with a quick wit and an easy laugh. We became friends, nothing romantic, just two people who enjoyed each other's company. She introduced me to her friend group, and slowly I started to feel like I belonged somewhere again. By the end of my second year in Denver, I'd been promoted to senior engineer. I bought a small house in the suburbs, my first real piece of property. I adopted a dog from the local shelter, a scrappy mutt named Copper, who had more energy than I knew what to do with. For the first time in years, I was happy. Not the desperate, anxious happiness I had felt with Megan, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Real happiness, peaceful happiness. I still thought about Megan sometimes, but not with anger or longing. I thought about her the way you think about a lesson you learned the hard way. I hoped she had found whatever she was looking for. I hoped she had grown. But I also knew that her journey was not my responsibility anymore. 3 years after I left Ohio, on an ordinary Thursday evening, I walked out of my office building and headed toward my car in the parking lot. The sun was just starting to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I was thinking about what to make for dinner, whether Copper needed a longer walk than usual mundane things. Then I saw her. Megan was standing next to my car, her arms crossed over her chest. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, tired. The confidence that used to radiate from her was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like defeat. "Jerome," she said as I approached, "I finally found you." I stopped a few feet away from her, keys in my hand. I was surprised to find that my heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. I felt calm in a way I never could have imagined 3 years ago. "Megan," I said simply. "Please," she started, her voice cracking. "Please let me explain. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I know I do not deserve your time, but please just hear me out." I did not say anything. I just waited. She took my silence as permission to continue. "I was seeing someone else," she admitted. "Marcus, you were right about everything." She wiped at her eyes. "But it is over. It has been over for almost 2 years. He left me for someone else, and I know that is karma. I know I deserved it." She took a step closer. "You were not clingy, Jerome. I was the one with the problem. You were the only person who ever really cared about me, and I threw that away. I have spent 3 years regretting it. I have spent 3 years trying to find you." Her voice broke completely. "Please, give me another chance. I will do anything. I will move here. I will go to therapy, whatever you need." I looked at her, standing there, this woman who had once made me question my own sanity. I thought about all those nights I spent lying awake wondering what I had done wrong. All those times I apologized for having feelings. All those moments I felt small and broken because of words she had thrown at me like weapons. And I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no desire for revenge. Just peace. "Megan," I said quietly, "I forgave you a long time ago. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying around that anger was too heavy, and I had to let it go to move forward." I saw hope flicker in her eyes, but I was not finished. "But I'm not the same person who sat in that dark apartment waiting for you. That version of me died the night you called him clingy for loving you. I have built a new life here, a good life, and there is no place in it for someone who made me feel crazy for caring. I unlocked my car and opened the door. I hope you find what you're looking for, Megan. I really do. But I already found mine. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing there getting smaller and smaller until she disappeared entirely. That was 6 months ago. Megan sent me a few emails after that night apologizing again, asking if we could at least be friends. I did not respond. Some chapters are meant to stay closed. These days my life is quieter than it has ever been, and I mean that in the best possible way. I wake up every morning in my little house at the foot of the mountains. Copper greets me with his usual enthusiasm, his tail wagging so hard his whole body shakes. I make coffee, sit on my porch, and watch the sun come up over the peaks. There is no anxiety, no waiting for bad news, no walking on eggshells, just peace. Last weekend I had Derek and Sophie and some other friends over for a barbecue. We sat in my backyard laughing and talking as the summer sun set behind us. At one point, Sophie raised her glass and made a toast. To good people, she said. And to finally finding where we belong. I thought about that toast for a long time after everyone left. For years, I thought belonging meant finding someone who would love me back. I thought it meant fitting into someone else's life, even if it meant shrinking myself to do it. But I was wrong. Belonging is not about finding someone who tolerates you. It is about finding yourself and then building a life that reflects who you really are. It is about surrounding yourself with people who never make you feel like you are too much for simply caring. I learned something important from my experience with Megan. Being called clingy or needy or too much by the wrong person does not mean there is something wrong with you. It means you are giving your best to someone who is not capable of receiving it. The right people in your life will never make you feel crazy for loving them. They will thank you for it. If you are watching this and you are in a relationship where you constantly feel like you are doing something wrong just by being yourself, I want you to hear me clearly. That is not love. Love does not make you smaller. Love does not make you doubt your own reality. Love does not scream at you at 3 a.m. for daring to wonder where your partner is. You deserve someone who answers your calls. You deserve someone who comes home to you. You deserve someone who makes you feel safe, not anxious. And if the person you are with cannot give you that, it is okay to leave. It is okay to protect your peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away without a word and never look back. As for me, I'm still figuring out what comes next. Maybe I will meet someone new someday, someone who appreciates the kind of love I have to give. Or maybe I will be happy on my own, building a life that I am proud of. Either way, I know I will be okay. Because I finally learned that my peace is worth more than anyone else's explanation. So let me ask you something before you go. Have you ever been in a relationship where you were made to feel like you were too much for simply caring? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button so more people can find it. And if you are not subscribed yet, join this community by clicking that subscribe button. We share stories here about real life, real pain, and real growth. Also, if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you so much for watching and for being here with me. I hope you found something in my story that helps you in your own journey. Remember, you are not too much. You are just right for the person who truly deserves you. Take care of yourself, and until next time, keep protecting your peace.